ADX Florence, built in 1994 south of Florence, Colorado, is known as the most secure prison in the United States, housing some of the world's most dangerous criminals. Today, we'll delve into the history, purpose, and controversies surrounding America's toughest prison. What is a Supermax prison? Supermax prisons are the highest-level security facilities, designed to contain inmates who pose extreme security risks. Inmates have very little time outside their cells and minimal contact with others. ADX Florence follows this model closely, and its strict design reflects the infamous Alcatraz, considered an early prototype for Supermax confinement. The prison's location on the outskirts of Florence, a small town once known as a pass-through for coal trains, now houses about 361 of the nation's most high-profile criminals. The inmates include serial killers, terrorists, drug kingpins, and cult leaders who are often deemed too dangerous for the general prison population. These inmates live in almost constant isolation, typically spending 23 or more hours per day, confined in 7 by 12-foot soundproof cells with a small slit window. Life in ADX. ADX. Florence is known for its extreme confinement conditions. Inmates are allowed outside of their cells only 1 hour per day, where they enter a larger cell referred to as the empty swimming pool. This room has a small skylight and no direct view of the outside, minimizing the inmates' knowledge of their surroundings. For the first 3 years, inmates cannot interact with others and remain in complete isolation. Over time, those exhibiting good behavior may be allowed more time outside their cells, or even transferred to less restrictive facilities. Cells contain only the bare minimum furnishings: a concrete bed, desk, and stool, with a sink and toilet designed to shut off if tampered with. Mirrors, radios, or televisions are privileges given only to those who follow strict rules. Instead of a mess hall, meals are brought to the inmates' cells by guards. The compound is heavily monitored with numerous cameras, 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors, and fences lined with razor wire. ADX is built on a strategy of sensory deprivation, with solitary confinement as a foundational aspect. Former ADX wardens have called it a cleaner version of hell, describing the conditions that can lead to mental health issues, such as hallucinations and irrational behaviors, due to extended isolation. Escape-proof design. Nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX, Florence is designed to be inescapable. Located in the high desert 2 hours south of Denver, ADX's high-security environment makes it virtually impossible to escape. Inmates remain in their cells 23 hours a day with no physical contact with others, while staff members have limited, highly controlled interactions with inmates. Cells contain concrete fixtures and have only one window, 3 feet high and 4 inches wide. In the past, notorious escape artist Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, was placed in ADX due to his repeated escapes from maximum security prisons in Mexico. In 2015, he famously escaped through a mile-long tunnel while riding a motorcycle, demonstrating his immense resources and determination. However, since its opening in 1994, ADX has had no successful escape attempts, further solidifying its reputation as an escape-proof facility. The origins of ADX. ADX was born after the killing of 2 correctional officers. According to the Washington Post, ADX was conceived in the wake of the killing of 2 correctional officers on October 22, 1983, at the Marion Federal Prison in Illinois, which was, at the time, the toughest federal prison in the country. After their deaths, Marion was changed into an all-lockdown facility and served as the test model for other Supermax lockdown facilities like Pelican Bay and, eventually, ADX. Is it worse than death? Many former ADX staff members and inmates describe life at ADX as deeply isolating and mentally punishing, likening it to a form of psychological torture. Robert Hood, who served as ADX warden from 2002 to 2005, famously told CNN that life in the facility was far worse than death, describing the prison as a place defined by relentless mental and sensory deprivation. The daily routine for inmates is highly monotonous, with little opportunity for physical or mental stimulation. Inmates spend almost every hour in solitary confinement, with limited access to books or external activities, amplifying the effects of isolation. Such severe confinement has sparked widespread debate about its impact on mental health, especially for those with pre-existing conditions like depression or anxiety. Critics argue that these conditions often lead to symptoms like hallucinations, memory loss, and increased aggression, raising ethical questions about the prison's role in rehabilitating or punishing its inhabitants. High-profile inmates. It holds many high-profile inmates. A facility for the worst of the worst, obviously, holds a lot of criminals with household names. ADX Florence is home to some of this country's most violent and evil criminals. It is also the #1 holding facility for convicted terrorists. One of the most famous residents is Thomas Silverstein, a convicted murderer and former Aryan Brotherhood leader who has committed 4 additional murders while in prison. Silverstein currently holds the record of being the longest resident of solitary confinement in the United States prison system, having been in solitary since 1983. Silverstein is often credited with being one of the reasons the ADX Supermax was designed, due to his uncontrollable activities in other prisons. Historically, the addition of another life sentence to a prisoner who already has one hasn't proved successful. Harsher penalties were needed to restore order and deter prisoners from killing prison guards. The threat of being transferred to solitary confinement at ADX Florence is the best deterrent the United States prison system has against violent crime. Controversies surrounding Supermax prisons. While Supermax prisons like ADX are designed to contain highly dangerous criminals, the prolonged use of solitary confinement has stirred significant controversy. David Foddy, director of the National Prison Project at the ACLU, argues that many inmates in Supermax facilities aren't violent threats, but find themselves there for minor rule violations or administrative convenience. According to Fati, placing non-violent or lower-risk offenders in these extreme conditions can cause profound mental harm and doesn't fit their needs or threat levels. One troubling example is that of a 16-year-old car thief in Wisconsin who was sent to a Supermax facility, raising ethical questions about the use of such extreme punishment for juvenile offenders. Another case involved David Tracy, a young man who was placed in Supermax confinement on a short drug-related sentence. He tragically hanged himself, underscoring the potential psychological toll of solitary confinement and highlighting the need for reassessment of confinement policies. What happens after ADX? The reality is that 95% of Supermax inmates will eventually be released. While some serve life sentences, many inmates leave these facilities and return to society, raising concerns about the long-term effects of extreme isolation. Advocates argue that Supermax prisons should better prepare inmates for reintegration to avoid releasing individuals who have endured years of psychological harm. ADX Florence remains one of the most controversial facilities in the U.S. prison system. While it is highly effective at containing dangerous individuals, its methods raise ethical and humanitarian questions. The debate continues over whether such extreme conditions are justified, especially for prisoners who may someday re-enter society. Let us know your thoughts on the Florence Supermax. Would you like to learn more about its infamous inmates and the challenges surrounding this prison model? If so, please subscribe to our channel for future updates. Thank you for watching.